Welcome. Today we are going to be looking at Chapter 1, Lesson 5, and it is decimal place value. And today is 8/18/20. And you can see that I've taken a page out of the book. I know it's a little bit blurry, but I will rewrite things as needed. This is actually from page 37 in your textbook. So we're looking at this model here and we want to show this number. And we have to remember when we're working with decimals and fractions that what one whole equals can change. So in this case, one whole is this flat, what we call a flat. This flat equals one whole, and it's a base 10 block. And it's asking us to first shade to show 77 hundredths. So there is a 7 in the tenths place, which means I have to shade 7 rods. So I'm going to shade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a 7 in the hundredths place, which means I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'm going to just fix my shading here. So now I have shaded my model to match 77 hundredths. It also wants us to write it in word form, so that would be 77 hundredths. And in standard form is 77 hundredths. And on the place value chart, first off, I always want to showcase my decimal there. It is always to the right of the ones place, between the ones and the tenths, always. Even if you do not see a decimal, it is always to the right of the ones place. If we're dealing with whole numbers only, we don't typically write it, but it is there. So we have 0, 1 wholes. There isn't a whole flat that is shaded. So we have 0 in the ones place. We have 7 rods, so 7 in the tenths place and 7 in the hundredths place. And we say this number as 77 hundredths because first off, this looks like a 77, and the last digit is in the hundredths place, which is the word we put on when we're saying a decimal. Wherever the last digit lands, whatever place value that the last digit lands in, that is the word we use at the end. So this is 0 and 77 hundredths, or 77 hundredths. So it is important to know that the value of the digit, in this case, the value of the digit in the tenths place is 7/10, or 7/10. So that's important to know. And the value of the digit in the hundredths place is 7 hundredths, or 7 hundredths if I could write it in standard form or in word form. The other important thing to know is that the digit in the hundredths place is 1/10 times as much as the value of the digit in the tenths place. And that means basically that this 7 is 1/10 the size of this 7. It is 1/10. So as I am moving to the right on my place value chart, it is getting smaller by 1/10. It is 1/10 the size. If I can also talk about it in reverse, and I can say that the tenths place is 10 times the size of the hundredths place. So it works both ways. We just have to commit to our memory and know that when I'm moving to a smaller place value, it is 1/10 the size. And if I am moving to a larger place value, it is 10 times the size. Okay, I'm going to turn my notebook page here because I'm going to look at page, this is from your book as well, page 38. And you can see from this picture that what one whole is has now changed. One whole is now this block. And I have to look at what each piece represents. So to look at what each piece represents, I have to know how many pieces make up the whole. And you probably already know that in this base 10 block, there are 1,000 little blocks. So each little square equals 1,000th because there are 1,000 of them. Here is the number that they have shaded for you. Now you might be thinking, but wait, a rod is 1/10. Not in this model. In this model, a rod is 100th because now there is a total of 1,000. So when our whole changes, so does the value of each piece. So when our whole changes size or changes how it's partitioned, then also the value of each piece changes. So in this case, each rod is 100th and each little square is 1,000th. And so when I put these in the place value chart, I don't have any one block shaded, so there are 0 ones. Here is my decimal right here between my ones place and my tenths place. I always want to highlight that. There are no tenths shaded. A tenth would be a whole flat, so it would be like if the whole face of this was shaded, that would be a tenth. There are none of those shaded. No complete flats shaded in this model with 1,000 pieces. There are 2 rods, which in this case are hundredths, so I put the 2 in the hundredths place. And then there are 7 little pieces, so there are 7 thousandths. So I read this number, I'm going to say thousands because my last digit is in the thousands place. I read this number as 0 and 27 thousandths, or just 27 thousandths. And if I ask you what is the value, move my notebook up a little bit, what is the value of the digit in the thousandths place, the answer would be, here's the thousandths place, and there's a 7 there on this number. The answer would be that the value of that is 7 thousandths, or in word form, 7 thousandths. All right, that's all for today's video lesson. I hope that helped.